Teardrop consists of electrolytes and salt. The chemistry of crying is not concerned with blame or fault. So who's that conscience sticking to the sole of my shoe? Who's that conscience sticking to the sole of my shoe? 'Cause it sure don't feel like love. It sure don't feel like love. Well, how does it feel? Feels like a threat, a voice in your head that you would rather forget. No joke. How does it feel? Feels like a threat, a voice in your head you would rather forget. But it sure don't feel like love. It sure don't feel like love.
Sure don't feel like love. This portion holds the family story of Rivka and Isaac, the child of Abraham and Sarah, and their two sons, their twins. Their twins, Jacob and Esau. And boy, it sure doesn't feel like love. A painful and tragic tale of two brothers who did not get what they needed and could not find their way to each other. These stories in Torah, they're so profoundly rich and beautiful because they are so real. One of the things that I think Judaism offers us in our core stories is text that shapes how we see each other and our world, and they are complex. They are not simplistic. They are difficult and ugly and beautiful and full of rejection and hurt and redemption and love and frustration and celebration and tragedy and more, because they are about family and community. And there is all of this and more alive in family and community. And sometimes it feels like love, and sometimes it sure doesn't feel like love. So in Genesis 25:27, in Breshit, we're here with this story. In Toledot is the Parsha. And we get a couple of very key verses that tell us of some of this pain. When the boys grew up, these twins, the text tells us Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the outdoors, but Jacob was a mild man who stayed in camp. And then this verse 28, Isaac favored Esau because he had a taste for game, but Rivka favored Jacob. If there's any kind of one sentence opener for pain you know is coming, is hearing that one parent, the translation is favored, but the word is love in the Hebrew. Ahavah. Isaac loved Esau and Rivka loved Ohevet et Yaakov. Such a heavy verse of Torah for me. It's one of the heaviest verses in Torah because of the setup for the unfolding that comes next. Jacob and Esau, these twin brothers, clearly set up in this dynamic. First, there's the stealing of a birthright that happens for a bowl of soup. Jacob, who is the one who stays in, who's close to his mom and studies and cooks, he has lentil soup at a time when his brother, the one who's the outdoors guy who hunts game with his dad, comes in wanting soup, being so hungry and thinking maybe his brother's teasing, thinking maybe I'm so hungry, he trades his birthright for a bowl of lentil soup. And then this tragic unfolding. When Isaac's old and his eyes are too dim to see, he calls his eldest son Esau, the one that we are told he loves the most. And he says, Esau. And Esau answers, Hineni, here I am. He said, I'm old now. I do not know how soon I might die. So take your gear, take your quiver and bow and go out into the open and hunt me some game and bring it back and prepare a dish for me as I like. Bring it to me to eat so that I may give you my innermost blessing before I die. The blessing of the oldest child, and a special blessing because he's the one who's favored by his father. And he's the oldest. So Rebecca's been listening, Rivka, the mama. She's heard what her husband has said to the son Isaac, her son too. When Esau has gone out to the open to hunt for game, she calls in Jacob and says, Jacob, here's what you're going to do. Go kill one of the animals we have here close and prepare a dish and bring it to your father. And Jacob says, wait a second, Mom. My brother is a hairy man and I'm not as hairy, I'm smooth skinned. And she said, take these skins down and put them on your body, animal skins, and they'll be like hair on your body and we can trick your father. But if I trick him, I'll be a trickster and I can bring upon myself a curse. His mother said, no, your curse will be upon me. Just do it. Do what I say. Go fetch the animal. So he does. And she takes the clothes of her son Esau and she puts them on Jacob so that he will smell of him and feel of him. She's thought of so many details. And she prepares the meal and gives it to the son, Jacob, and he comes and says, Father. And he says, which of my sons are you? And Jacob says, I'm Esau, your firstborn. I've done as you told me. Sit up and eat, and I'll give you and give me your innermost blessing. And he says, how did you do this so quickly? Opportunity here to say. But no, he says, because the Lord has granted me good fortune. He says, come closer, let me feel you, whether you're really my son Esau or not. And he draws close, and the text tells us that Isaac says it's the voice of Jacob, yet it's the hands of Esau. Are you really my son? And Jacob answers, I am. Then serve me and let me eat. And he does. And he says, come close, my son. And he smelled, the clothes are smelling of Esau, and he gave them this blessing. May God give you of the dew of the heaven and the fat of the earth, abundance of new grain and wine. May people serve you and nations bow to you. Be master over your brothers and let your mother's son bow to you. Cursed be those who curse you and blessed be those who bless you. And Jacob takes this blessing filled, as you can imagine, by a blessing from his father he's probably always longed for. And he leaves. And right then Esau enters and says, what's happening? And his father says, who are you? And he says, I'm your son Esau. I'm your firstborn. And Isaac is seized with violent trembling and says, who was just here then? Who gave me this game? And I ate of it and blessed him. And he has to stay blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst into wild and bitter sobbing. And he said, bless me too, Father. And he said, I can't. Your brother came and stole your blessing. He stole your blessing. He took my birthright and now he steals my blessing. And he begs and he said, have you not one blessing for me, Father? Bless me too, Father. And Esau wept aloud. And his father said to him, I can give you a small blessing. You will enjoy the fat of the earth and the dew of the heaven above. By your sword you will live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restive, you will break his yoke from your neck. Oh, pain in these ancient tales. And so alive in families still, these dynamics. I remember working with a B'nai Mitzvah student, and she had this Torah portion, and we read it together, and she just burst it out. She couldn't control it, and she said, no one here is taking any responsibility. Absolutely. It is so very true. No one here is taking responsibility. No one is owning what they're doing, except maybe Rivka, and that is a conversation for another day, because maybe she's taking responsibility is key to loving. Ahavah, the word they use to say what they experience for each other. Ahavah, love. This is also a midah in our practice of the Musar Midot, the Ahavah midah. Oh, it's such a powerful midah, such a powerful spiritual practice, the practice of loving. Each month, as you know, in Nefesh, we work on a midah, and this month was Yirah, November. Next month is going to be Ahavah. So we begin tonight with Ahavah. In our tradition, love is active. It is not passive. We're instructed to love. We just chanted that in that beautiful soundscape of the Ve'ahavta, that we must love with all of our hearts and all of our souls. So what is love? Love is both feeling and action. The Jewish tradition asserts this notion over the centuries. The feeling of free-flowing, generous, open, loving that we associate with divine love, that we also said tonight in Ahavat Olam, in the mornings with Ahavah Rabbah, and it's the verb of loving. It's the freely giving, always present, just because we are love. And it's the action of loving, the practice of loving. They are both alive inside of Ahavah. Love is an act of will. It is an intentional commitment to the growth of the other, and to the growth of ourselves, and to the growth of the world. It is an intentional commitment to the growth of the other. Love is made up of multiple components. In my studies on love, I've come across, as you all know, Erich Fromm's work, who I love, the psychological theorist and philosopher, born in Germany to Orthodox Jewish family, who came to the States when the Nazis took control of Germany. And he devoted a treatise to love, the art of loving. And he says love is care, responsibility, and knowledge. Care, responsibility, and knowledge. Care. We care for others. We nurture them as a part of love. We care for our loved ones, for our neighborhoods, for our earth. But care alone is not love. Say that again. Care alone is not love. Bell Hooks writes, what many people experience of love is care. In All About Love, another beautiful treatise where she begins with Erich Fromm's definition and then goes to powerful places. She shares we can be cared for, but if there's not the responsibility and knowledge, and she adds into it also commitment and trust, then it is not love. It can be very helpful to divine what isn't love. It sure don't feel like love. To know what is love, it's also helpful to know what isn't love. There can be no love without justice, Bell Hooks tells us. Abuse and neglect, they negate love. You might have been cared for, but it might not have been love. Here, the parents are not taking responsibility, and sadly, Jacob and Esau are not either. How I long for them to say no, for Jacob to say, no, I'm not going to do this to my brother, to take some responsibility. Or after the stolen blessing moment, for the two of them to see each other. Let's take responsibility for what's happening. But alas, no, at least not yet. Stay tuned. There's more Torah to come, and I think it gets better. My experience of it gets transformed. Responsibility, we know, is not here. Care might be here, But what about knowledge? Care, responsibility, and knowledge. What about knowledge? Being seen and known. So central to loving. Being seen and known. Such a huge element in love. Eric Fromm uses the word respect. He says respect from the root of it in the Latin, to see and be seen, to know and be known. And one of the aspects of family and loving that can be so painful is not being fully seen and known. So many of us had parts of ourselves that were seen and known, and other parts of us that were told to just go put that somewhere else. Don't want to see that part of you. Put it away. And it's painful to figure out that only parts of ourselves will be seen and known and acknowledged, and other parts will be rejected. Unfortunately, it often continues in the families and families of origin, and sometimes the families of choice that we make. This pattern of not seeing and knowing fully. It's a commitment of time and openness that acknowledge requires. It's a commitment. Loving requires a commitment to the soul work of care, responsibility, and knowledge. The spiritual practice of love. It requires work, presence, time, attention. We all long for loving. It's a deep need, and it is possible. It is possible in our lives. Right now, we are inside of our homes. Some of us solo, some of us with families, some of us with relationships, where we can do right now this spiritual soul work of loving. In fact, we're going to get some even more time maybe with these curfews and other things that are happening. Even more inside time. And now that we are we really spending the time fully knowing and seeing those that we are with? In fact, it's often hardest to fully see and know the people that we spend the most time with, that we feel closest to, because we get set. I know you, I know you, I know your patterns, I know what you think and feel. Now, I'm not suggesting that you grab somebody and say, tell me what I don't know about you. That's not going to work. That won't work. Tell me all about you. Partner, child, friend. It's an openness. It's a stance of knowing, a curiosity, a wondering, and a willingness to say with humility, I don't know everything about you. I may have known you for years with such intimacy, but I am always open to learning and to knowing who you are as you change, as we all change and grow through our years, to be curious and wondering, curious and wondering. There's a beautiful practice from the mindful parenting practice. It works with kids, it works with adults, of setting aside 20 minutes of mindfulness in relationship, where you are in a practice of connection and wondering, and you are not leading. When our kids were babies, I was a part of this group at the Maple Center at Mindful Parent. We were completely quiet and just observing our children. And I've continued to use that. And boy, is it helpful with teenagers too. Just going to be present, not going to demand or assist or fix, or just be present. Just spend this time with you without intervening, with letting you unfold and be who you are, with a conscious stance of sitting back and being with. An intentional practice. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Not that you don't respond if they ask you questions. Of course, you're responsive, but it's a time of being open to wonder about the other person with curiosity and with a kind of Shabbos time, not rushed time. I have one last story from popular culture to share with you. And that is that friendships are also a beautiful place for loving. In fact, often friendships and building families of choice are where we get to really experience loving, care, responsibility, and knowledge more than we have sometimes in other spaces. So I'm watching Schitt's Creek right now. Put your hand up if you're with me, anybody else in there, because this is some good stuff. And if you're like, what is everybody, just do it. it's good, and it keeps getting better. And one of the elements of the show that I really love is the developing friendship between Stevie and David. Are you with me, watchers of this? It's one of the most beautiful stories of love that I have seen in popular culture, because it's care, responsibility, and knowledge, and you see it developing over time, and without the pressures of it having to be romance. Like, you don't usually get to see friendships given their full deserve. And so there's this scene that I want to share with you. It's not going to give any plot lines away. I'm going to be very careful. So Stevie had assumed that David was gay, but now she's not sure. I'm not going to tell you why, but now she's not sure. And they're at a store, and they're in the wine section. And Stevie is asking David, trying to get clarity about his sexuality, but she asks it this way. She says to him, "I drink red wine, and only red wine. And I also thought you only drank red wine." "Oh," he says, "I see where you're headed. I do drink red wine, but I also drink white wine. And I also like rosé. And a couple summers back, I tried a Merlot that used to be a Chardonnay." So Stevie says, "So you're just really open to all wines." David says, "I like the wine and not the label. Does that make sense?" And she responds, "Yes, yes it does. I like the wine and not the label. Yes, and yes it does." I love the scene because it's this moment of them knowing in this open-hearted way more about each other. I also love the scene because I've never had my own approach to sexuality and my own experience of it so clearly shared in this form. I like the wine and not the label. Perfectly described, so beautifully described. So there are moments like this that are epiphanies, reveals, seeing and knowing, like big epiphany like that. But there are other moments, most moments of knowing are ones where you just open up over time because we have room to see each other. And sometimes in the case of like Jacob and Esau, their parents decided early on who they were and didn't give them much room. So sometimes you have to fight to be seen and known. In being loved, we are able to be more knowing and known. When we love, we can let our hearts speak, Bell Hooks tells us. And this often requires risk, a risk to be known and seen. When we hold this midah, it's about holding ourselves in love, holding our beloveds in love, and holding the world in love. The heart of justice is truth-telling. And we have seen in the movement for Black Lives and in the Me Too movement levels of truth-telling that are about moving us to deeper love. Can we see it? Can we come to know it? Ahavah, to care for, to have responsibility, to see and know ourselves. Ahavah, to care for, to have responsibility for, to see and know each other. Ahavah, to care for, to have responsibility for, to see and know our world. May you love, may you be loved. Shabbat Shalom.